Welcome to the PowerHaus Podcast. I'm Gabrielle Caine, and this show reveals what successful people do differently so you can too. We'll dig into the choices, habits, and turning points behind the results and leave you with one practical step to use each week. Hello, thank you for joining us here at the PowerHaus Podcast. My name is Gabrielle Caine, and I have my guest here with me today, Mr. Mike Seal from R&R. Mike, would you like to say hello, introduce yourself, and let us know what you do?
Hey, how are you? So my name is Mike Seal. I'm actually a realtor down in Windsor, Ontario, and also a realtor manager for Referral Network Realty. We are a unique real estate brokerage because we are a real estate brokerage with no agents. So a little bit like Uber, an opportunity for people to contact us, look for a specialist realtor in a particular field that they're looking for, and we hunt to find the best agent that fits that profile. So our goal over the last decade now is to be working with investor focused real estate professionals. These are people that are 10, 15, 20 years in the industry, own multiple investment properties, and really help guide people through their investing process. The goal that I think one of the biggest things I always say to people, I guess, is, the nice thing about our realtors is they don't need any money, right? So they're not financially driven because they've built their portfolios. A lot of them have achieved their freedom days and gotten where they wanted to be in their real estate business, and they do it out of the passion of enjoying the industry. So that really sets a pace for real estate investors to know that we're not afraid to walk away from a deal if we don't think that's the right fit for the person, right? Our process works really well because we start with a KYC, which is our know our client. Always starts with an intake where we'll go through where we think the risk tolerances are for those people, help them set up all of the players that they need in the field based on what strategy that they want to focus on, and then direct them to the realtors that we think are going to be the right fit for them to be able to achieve their goal. If I go back to 2014, 2015, 2016, our thing was 6 to 10 doors in 5 to 7 years. That was our track record to try and get people to their freedom day. And we found that people made it to those things and achieved them usually within the 7 to 9 year range was their opportunity to say, hey, we're making enough money from our portfolio and growing our real estate business that we've got an option for, the husband or the wife to retire from their existing business to go more full time into their real estate business. Nowadays, we're finding a lot more of a lift because market values have grown, appreciation value has climbed. A lot of people were sitting a lot more net worth inside or in their primary residence. Quite a bit of a pivot over the last 2 or 3 years post COVID, where we're finding people have enough equity to actually launch themselves into multifamily res right from the beginning. So lot less buy rehab burr type strategy with investors, a lot more, find a property that you can sever part of the building lot because it may be a double building lot, and then build a new purpose-built rental complex there, maybe do a slight renovation on the existing home and then sell the existing home to offset the cost on the new build. So a lot of different dynamics moving throughout the country as a whole. But those seem to be the strategies that we see coming forward for 25, 26, 27.
Okay, so you're helping entrepreneurs build their portfolio, reach a point where they can stop their side hustle and make that their full-time passion so that they can retire and live the life that they want and then maybe get rid of their job, their job, whatever they've been doing full-time. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Beautiful. What is your role? Just to be clear, so are you an agent? Are you a broker? What exactly would you say your title
a
is?
little bit of a Swiss Army knife, right? So, I mean, to give a little bit of a background, I started, you know, with the idea of working in business and finance. Back in 1989, I actually went to work. I thought I was going to go to university and had a mortgage broker friend of my mom say, you don't want to do that. You're just going to waste a bunch of time at school. You're a quick kid. You've got real strong sales ability. Let's take you into the mortgage broker's field. And I actually started working doing mortgage financing for land acquisitions and development. So working with a lot of developers, a lot of builders that were looking for spec home money and contractors and even developers that were looking for the money that they needed to service the development projects. So that's where my kind of leap into stumbling at 17, 18 years old got started in the industry. And through that timeline, I started working with a builder, couple builders as an in-house sales representative. When the REBA Business and Brokers Act came out for real estate in 2002, before it was coming out around 98, was when the registrar said, look, you're kind of playing in a fine line working as a mortgage person, but also working as an inside salesperson for a builder. They felt that the recommendation would be better for me to get a real estate license. And that's what I did. In 99, I went and applied and got my real estate license for 2000. It was actually December of 99, I think, that I got my license. So I'm just breaking my 25th year, 26th year now as a real estate pro, in addition to my previous decade of working in real estate anyway, but mostly in the development and building market.
That's
Um,
one heck of a place to start.
yeah, got really lucky. My mom sat on the housing advisory committee for the city. So that's where it started. And my passion's always been in real estate because, we grew up in a broken family. My mom was disabled. And, we struggled to find housing being in, single parent with a disability, trying to take care of two little boys, and we weren't the least mischievous children of the world. So that was a bit of a struggle for her on her own. Um, but needless to say, that was something that we felt. And that's what I think what gave me the passion to want to get into real estate was, trying to help people not go through the same struggles that we went through.
Would you say
Um,
that that was a driving force behind your success and your the goals that you had set for yourself?
100%. Like my mom was probably the driver that not only gave me the passion to go into the industry, but also had all the connections that helped me grow my business. Because a lot of the developers, builders, contractors were people that were making applications at the municipality through the city to get their projects approved. So my mom sitting on the advisory committee, there were a number of people like, Mady Development Corporation and Chuck and, Old Man Bob Pedler and, Walter Muroff. And these were all kind of the beginning industry people at the time that were working in that market. So I had a lot of good connections by saying, hey, I'm Gloria Seal's son. Give me a shot at it. And that really helped me kind of grow what I was trying to do for my business. I tried a lot of different stuff. I tried, nightclub ownership for a little while, not because I wanted to, but because I lent some money to some people that couldn't make the payment and ended up with a bar on my hands for a couple of years.
Oh,
So
wow.
that
How
was
old
a
were you
good
when that
side
happened?
gig. That would have been like 1994 to 1998. So pretty young. And it was like, hey, you lent the money, you go figure out how to pay for it. So that was
Wow.
interesting. I started my software company in 2001 once I got my real estate license because realtor.ca and MLS didn't even exist, right? And our local real estate board, all the agents were like, hey, this website stuff is going to be kind of cool. Let's get into this. And I had some friends that were techs, and we built a web platform, and we actually had local contractors advertising on the platform. So the realtors were going on and loading all their listings to market their listings, and the advertisers were helping fund the development of the project. And then we slowly evolved into becoming the company Easy Media, which is our software business, and it's focused on real estate website solutions for agents across the country. So that's been a business now, almost 25 years as well. So that's always been kind of a bit of a sideline outside my real estate business, but it helped me build a lot of relationships across the country. I got to learn what, top realtors were doing in different markets because we were not only working with them in the capacity of doing referrals, but I'm working with them in their tech business and helping them grow their own business. So there's lots of interconnections that I've been able to make over the years that obviously transitioned me to the stage of becoming part of Referral Network Realty, and working as a realtor manager with them. It's that whole old saying, right? It's who you know. And that's what's, I think, built us that chance to do what we're doing now, and that's help people grow their portfolio, help families build wealth.
Wow. Okay, so this it sounds like there's a lot going on here. I just want to backpedal just a little bit here. Let's say you're in high school and you graduate, and I'm assuming, and then you're like, okay, so now what do I do with my life? Is that the point at that age when you had decided that you were going to start in real estate and utilize the connections that you already had? What was the thought process there?
You know, I actually registered to go to the University of Windsor to because my focus was to go get my degree in business and finance. And after my first semester at the university was when my mom's friend pulled me aside and said, "Look, maybe you want to get into financing as a mortgage broker because you're a better salesperson than a guy that's going to sit behind a desk." And I had good connections in the community through family and my mom, and it was easy for me to approach people as a mortgage representative for the company at the time and just say, "Hey, you know what, my mom, everybody knows who you knew who my mom was. I want to see if you guys are looking for any funding or financing for your next project." And it just built that way. It took off well. The income was good. I mean, remember, just backpedaling more, I had a son at 17 years old. So I was a single dad from the time he was 8 months old.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So Zach's 35 now. But at that time, having to go to school, having to find a job, having something that didn't have flexibility was difficult when I was backpacking a little, year old kid with me everywhere I was going, 2-year old kid with me. So working in construction sites for a couple hours at open houses and model homes on the weekends was easy. Doing mortgage financing stuff, because a lot of it was phone call stuff, easier for me to be able to manage I needed to be entrepreneurial. I needed to be flexible, right? If he was sick, it couldn't be something where I had to miss work, right?
So
So having to work for someone or by the hour was never an option for me.
okay, so that makes a lot of sense. I mean, your upbringing and your mom was a single mom, had disability, or a disability, sorry, and then you're a dad at 17 to add on to that. I mean, talk about stress. Talk about trying to cope through just making it through the day. That must have been really stressful and really difficult.
Yeah, it was. I mean, fortunately for me, Zach was a really good kid as a little guy. He was easy to manage. And my family was there for support, right? Like my mom could always watch him on the weekends when I needed to do something on a weekend. If I had appointments, her and my stepdad could always kind of pull the weight when I needed them there, which was terrific. But still a difficult thing to navigate, to say the least, you know. But I think it gave me the strength because if I didn't sell, we didn't eat. Right? So
Yeah.
you had to work. You had to find systems. You had to find a strategy and you had to find your niche in the market. I was lucky enough to find my niche in real estate, both being able to help people structure financing. Even after I became a realtor, the knowledge that I learned in that first 10 years of doing land acquisitions and development and assembly and working in house with builders helped launch pad me into the real estate market right out of the gate. Like you look at my first year in real estate, it was easy to be the number one agent around because I was selling whole subdivisions at a time where other agents were still trying to knock on doors and sell houses at 80 grand a house.
Okay, so I mean, I think it's so important to point out you had a really good support system. As
Yeah.
difficult as it was, you guys came together when you guys needed each other. And I have to ask, mom was not in the picture at all? Baby mom?
No, not in any capacity that was worth any value.
Understood.
And again,
Okay.
keep in mind she was a 16-year-old kid. I was a couple years older than her, right? I launch padded into making a revenue stream relatively quickly coming out of high school. And I didn't have the time to, and that's I think part of the reason why the mortgage brokers and people had approached me, and that vehicle worked better for me than trying to go to school, because I still needed an income through that whole time period that I would have been in university. You had to weigh the odds, what was more important, right? And where there's a will, there's a way. So finding the path of least resistance was the way that I went. And not that it didn't come with a lot of hard knocks and a lot of learning, but I always tell people I got a degree in street, right? Like you just got enough doors slammed in your face and you learn to do volume. It's what I try to teach people now all the time with real estate agents that we talk to through our web company. They're always calling us now, hey, we've been in the business since 2012 or 2013, and the market always went up. We've never had to deal with a difficult market and things that are happening right now in the real estate industry. And some of those people, it's really hard for them to understand that they just need to put their shoes on and move, right? As an entrepreneur, you only need to sell your product once, and if you can sell it to one person, then there's value in it to try and sell it to the next person and the next person after that, right? And it really becomes a numbers game for anybody trying to start their business. It's just, if one person says no, there's another person at the other end that says yes. I think where my strength came into real estate was I wasn't afraid to knock down doors, because a lot of times when I started as a young kid, mostly I think because I didn't know nothing and I didn't know any better, I had no fear of banging on somebody's door and asking them if they want to sell the property behind their house, right? And say, hey, I want to look at these 10 properties that are in this area that all have these really deep properties, and we could do a severance and take a chunk of the back off and develop a piece of land back there that could become a 20 or 30 unit subdivision. So knocking on doors kind of became a thing, you
So you're
know,
18 years old knocking on doors and
knocking
people
on doors
slamming the
looking
door in
for
your
people that
face?
are looking to do refinances for mortgages. It's probably 21 when I started doing land acquisitions and assemblies,
Okay. How
you know.
how hard is it to have someone slam the door in your face and say no? And do you feel defeated? Do you feel like you ever want to give up?
When I started in mortgage broker, we used to have to cold call, right? And I think that gave you a bit of a buffer, because you dial 100 people a day, and you were using what we called the TILA book back then. It basically was like a registry that showed when people bought their houses. So you were timing like a 4-year window for that fifth year renewal coming up, or you were looking at something where maybe the interest rates were 9% at that time and the new interest rates were 6. So there were lots of people refinancing to a lower mortgage rate. So you were dialing and dialing and dialing and dialing and dialing. So lots of hangups, lots of phone calls. But you started to find that if you got through 100 phone calls and picked up 2 prospects, and one of those prospects could convert, and you made yourself $1,000, you literally learned to see how many of those you could do a week, right? And you get it, if you get addicted to the win instead of the loss, it's easier for people to get there. When I started doing real estate, Bob Pedler, I mean, if I was sitting in my desk at 9 o'clock in the morning, he'd have boot that chair right out from underneath me. Say, what are you doing in the office if you're not making money? Because you're not making money sitting in a chair. You got to get out there and meet people, and, farming neighborhoods. So and this is good for investors too. Like when you look at a neighborhood that may be an older area anywhere in the province or country for that matter, there's a certain number of properties that go for sale every year, right? And there's always that older person that lived in that house for 20 or 25 years. The home's a bit tired, and there's an opportunity. That's what we're finding right now. That's what we're looking for in today's market. We're doing the things that we did 20 years ago. Right now, it's like a repeat performance of everything we did 20 years ago. It's time to drive the neighborhoods, look at the streets, find the properties that are on a double building lot, bang on the door, find out if those people need interest, right? Are you thinking about selling your home? No, I'm not. Well, I noticed you're on a double building lot. Would you consider selling the lot next door if I was willing to put the time and effort in to do the severance? What would that value add be for you? Maybe I can help them with getting a renovation done on their existing home. We've got one of those in Ford City where we actually went in and did a renovation on a property for an owner in exchange for the cost of the lot next door, because
Hmm.
they owned the property, but they didn't have the money to do the reno they wanted for their home, but the value was in the land. So by doing the severance, they were able to generate the revenue, and we were able to complete the renovation for them, and it was a win-win for everybody. So creativity is always a good way for people to approach it as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love how you're able to recognize that someone might have a pain point or a need, and that you're able to solve that problem for them in exchange for something that they didn't even realize that they could use. That is so
Yeah,
creative.
yeah.
That must have been a massive turning point when you discovered that.
Well, yeah, and I think I guess the advantage that we have now is that all of that knowledge and all of the experience that I've got is stuff now that I can pass on to investors on strategies and ideas. They don't get discouraged. Like, this business is a new business a lot of times for people when they're just getting started. So, giving them some guidance and advice on how to find opportunities in the market. These Sometimes there's stuff that's just not on the market, right? And that requires shoes on, shake hands, kiss babies, and go meet some people, right? And we see that all the time with people. Off-market opportunities are a lot of times great investment opportunities for investors. We need realtors that can do that heavy grind, right? And that's what we look for. Guys that are successful, strong, but aren't afraid to go back to basics to get the deal done. When we get an investor that comes through the door, if they say, "Hey, I'm looking in this particular market," and there's not something that fits their profile in that market, but it can be created, that's when it's important for our investors to jump on board, or our investor agents to jump on board and go find that property. I think that's what one of the big advantages to our team has been, is that our realtors know how to go hunting because they did it for themselves.
Okay, so you guys have drive, you guys have ambition, you have experience, and it sounds like history repeats itself.
Yeah.
What do you do when the market's not that great and it's not really good for buyers or what have you?
Well, I think that every market, you can make money in any market. You need to find the strategy that works in that market. There's a deal to be had in any real estate market across the country, whether the market's good, bad, or indifferent. It's a
Even right
question
now.
of, yeah, even right now. Like right now in today's market, everything's on sale. Prices are coming down, cash flow is starting to happen again. Now it's time for the hunt, right? There may have been an investor that over leveraged themselves during COVID. Now they've got pain points. Remember that if they bought the property as an income property, there's some equity space in that deal. Those people now, what they may have bought and may have over leveraged is an opportunity for someone else to come in and find on a power of sale or on a urgent stress point for sale, right? The other thing is new development. Right now, with government funded programs like the HST rebate, for purpose built rental housing, CIP programs, which are city improvement programs for trying to stimulate a market for rental stock, or even CMHC's MLI Select program, or even their standard rental housing mortgage program. These are all ways to be able to make an opportunity work in today's market. I mean, just to step out of the R&R part and into the Windsor real estate part, this year alone, we've sold over 200 units in a market where everyone else in the new build market is flat. And we've done it by using CMHC's MLI Select program, an aggressive strategy with local municipalities and financing incentives from the city, and then using the MLI Select mortgage program to be able to extend the amortizations and get a preferred interest rate.
Okay, so what if someone comes in, an entrepreneur, a newbie, someone who was not familiar with CMHC or any of these things that you're speaking of? How can they have the confidence that when they go in that they're going to do this right?
Well, that's the whole part of the KYC, right? Getting a chance to sit down with us and let us actually see where they're sitting and what their position is. Maybe they don't have enough money or a high enough net worth to enter the multifamily space. I've got some young kids from the Guelph area were a great example. They had a couple hundred grand from their refi or an ELOC, but they weren't sure if they wanted to leverage themselves into anything large. We went out, we found a small infill property, did the exact strategy that we said, bought a single family home, we rehabbed the house, we severed the building lot, we sold the property. Funny enough, we bought that house, I think, for 365, did the little $30,000, $40,000 reno in there, sold the house again for 380 without the building lot, ended up with the lot with services at around 60,000 in cost, and then built a brand new 3-unit apartment complex on it, which they qualified. I think we bought that thing for 650 maybe. We paid for the triplex unit, which now cash flows $1,300 a month. That gave them the confidence with what they actually bought. They said, hey, we bought a cash flowing triplex. Yes, it took us a year to get here, but our end result was a brand new building with less maintenance, with no rent control in Ontario, which everyone knows that that's a huge bonus, right? And now they felt comfortable to say, hey, you know what? We're comfortable with how this strategy works. What else you got? And with the help of their dad, and his net worth statement combined with some income that they had on an ELOC, they purchased their second property, which was a 6-unit purpose built rental complex. Now they've got, 3 doors here, their duplex that they owned in Guelph. So that was 5 doors plus six. That already gave them 11. And now they're buying their next 6-unit building, actually just going to be removing conditions in the next month. So two 23-year-old kids that started with a duplex in Guelph that landed with, 15, 18 doors in their first 18 months of investing. They didn't have to know anything because we looked at what their risk level was, what they could do. We found a market that would work for them, and we grew from there.
Okay. So, I mean, it's kind of like learning as you go.
Mhm.
And would you say that as you get to know your client and obviously through your experience, you can see the possibilities, but they can't due to, lack of experience. Would you say that you hold their hand? Would you say that you present all these opportunities and say, here you have option A, B, C, D, whatever? And then they make an educated decision? How does that process work?
I think we take a bit more of a direct approach. I've always looked at everyone like my partner, right? So we are doing this together and we are growing your portfolio together. And that's always been the R&R approach, right? We want to be part of the family. We're the lead point for them to work with the real estate people, which are a direct benefit to their team, because having an investor focused agent is much better than having someone who has minimum experience in investing that may direct them in the wrong way. I think the benefit with us is a bit of a buffer to say, don't do that. That's not going to grow us to where we want to go on our goal. The last thing we ever want to see is someone plunging toilets till they're dead. That's what I always say, right? I can't tell you how many times we've seen investors take a workshop, join a program, then we meet them and all of a sudden they're upside down. They're like, oh my gosh, I bought this duplex and it's negative cash flow $200 a month. And what can I do? And I sure wish I would have waited because I could have bought this instead of that. Right. So sometimes that excitement, it get rich slow is such an important thing for people to understand, because patience is everything in the real estate business.
Yeah,
Finding the
I can
right deal
understand that.
that's going to be the right home run swing so that they can make that first purchase grow to the next purchase and then grow to the next purchase. And that requires patience. It's not just go out, buy a duplex, and let's see how it goes. It's whatever that first deal is, has to be the hat trick that gets you to the second and third deal.
You paint a nice picture. I like how you called it a hat trick. So, when it comes to all this, if I'm understanding correctly, you had the influences that you did as a kid, then going into high school and a little bit of turbulence, if you will, you make the connections and you think, okay, I did one semester in university. I'm not continuing down this path. I'm going to do this. That made the most sense to you. And I love how you're able to pivot from one path to the next because you recognized, no, this is not going to work out long term. So you pivot. I applaud you for that. I think that that's a fantastic thing. A lot of people need to hear that maybe the first decision you make isn't always going to be the one that you stick with, and being fluid, going with the flow and saying, okay, we're going to do this now is so important. We can't just get stuck in something because we invested X amount of time or money in it. And sometimes cutting your losses before it becomes more of one can actually change the entire trajectory of your career and your choices moving forward. Let's say you're in your 20s now, you've done your door knocking, you've done your phone calls, um, and you've been in the business now for somewhere between 5 and 10 years, I'm guessing. Did you continue with real estate as an agent while learning how to do real estate investing yourself? Was that ever something that you decided to take on your own?
This is the funny story. I never actually looked at myself as a real estate investor
No way.
until, yeah, I did land assemblies. I would, buy lots. I In 2009 I got my builder's license because the market went bad and I had a builder go bankrupt on me with a bunch of houses half built. And I didn't know what to do because I was like, how am I going to get paid if these things don't get finished? Like, these people have committed to buy a home and the builder's gone. And fortunately for me, the developer at the time that I was working with said, look, come with me, kid. We're going to get this done. And I partnered up with the developer and we took the houses back from the builder and finished the homes. And it was a learning experience in itself, too, because I actually had to, be on a job site all day trying to save my business because we had like it was a substantial amount of money. Like, we're talking 10 or 15 homes now. So at the time, like, without those, it would have really put me in a difficult financial position. So, he saved me again, people and connections and them knowing that you're a good person, having trust in the fact that you put your teeth in stuff and don't let it go until it gets done is what gave me the ability to get in and become a builder for those few years that I needed to be, not because I wanted to be, but because I needed to be at the time. And it helped us get through that chasm of 2008, 2009, 2010, and 12. Because it not only helped me, it helped the builders and developers that I worked with. Because, prices were retracting. We were, able to still build products and then still sell homes when other people were struggling to get that job done. So
Okay,
it,
this is first of all, I need to just make a quick point. This is the juice I'm looking for, Mike.
so
That's
I
it's the
think,
hurdles
when,
that you run into.
yeah, and I think out of inspiration comes from desperation is a good way to put it. And I think that, throughout my career, it's just been a constant pivot, like I didn't expect it. I got into mortgage financing, and that was kind of in the same field as what I thought I was going to go to school for, which was business and finance. And, that evolved into relationships with builders, that evolved into a sales position, then being a lender, having some money and lending money to somebody to open up a bar that wasn't successful for the bar owner and having to take that back to try and recover my investment. You know what I mean? And even the software company started out with the web stuff because, we wanted websites for realtors. And, when that company was struggling, we hired the kid that was doing the work and kept going forward. So it's always been an entrepreneurial pivot out of necessity and of evolution of doing the things you need to do when you need to get them done, right? It wasn't I want to get into the web business. It was this is a vehicle that will help us grow our real estate business. We need to put our hands in this and wrap around it and hire the people that have the knowledge that we need to get the business built and scale. How do we figure out the compensation part of that? Was by offering that same service that we were using to other realtors across the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we've done because it grows that way, right? I mean, back to our conversation about how I became a real estate investor, I didn't think what I was doing was investing, but really I was buying raw land. We were developing that property. We were servicing that project. We were building that property and we were flipping that home,
Sorry,
right?
how old were you when you started doing that?
I don't know how old I was in 2009, but I don't know.
How do you,
you know,
okay, so my mind is blown right now because I mean, you think you're helping people and you're a real estate agent and you're going to do the development because that's where it flowed, and then all of a sudden the developer disappears and you're like, okay, I've never been a developer. I've never done this
well, it wasn't
job.
the
I've never
developer
gone to
that
school.
disappeared. It was the builder that went bad on us.
Sorry, the builder,
Yeah.
my apologies. Thanks for the correction. So they disappear, but you've never done that person's job. So how do you jump into that seat? How do you
It was a
execute that?
lot of, because I knew all the trades and suppliers from being around the job sites all the time, it was a lot of, I call it begging and pleading, right? It was a lot of, hey, Dino, you're the landowner. I need some financing. I want to save these deals. How can we make this work? Thank God him and his team were spectacular. His son was amazing to work with as a partner. And, you know, they helped navigate me through the grunt work that needed to happen. The trades were important. The team was critical mass. Like getting the right guy that does the excavation, getting the right guy that does all the pieces, and then working with the guys that you had on your team to work together. I'll never forget like the last couple houses that I built in River Downs. Like I got those houses done. They were 3,200 square feet, and I finished that house in 73 days flat. Like it was a rocket ship build. And it wasn't even that I was good at what I did, it was the team behind me were monsters. Like the guys had such good relationships with one another that they literally knew how to drive this thing through for me because I didn't know everything I was doing, whether it was good, bad, and different, but I did hire the right people that knew the other people that I needed in the middle and made sure that everybody was working with everybody to get to the end goal, and that was to save us all. Because with all these half-built homes sitting out there, it wasn't just me getting hurt. It was every trade that had put their money into that thing that wasn't going to get paid if these things went bad. So we all had a mutual agreement that we all wanted to get our money and what we had invested in those properties back out of those properties. So the team effort of everyone working together is what got us to the goal of getting all the houses done, getting all the people moved in, and getting everybody paid.
That is incredible. And it shows, I mean, the passion that you and everyone that you put together on this team, what they have to do things right, to do it, get things done and completed, not just half-assed or just drop it and say, okay, hands up in the air, I'm done. But also the people that you were selling these units to, the lengths that you're willing to go to make sure that you follow through on that promise, that you deliver for them, because that's got to be scary. If that's me and I say, okay, I want this new development or I want this new unit and it's going to be built in a couple of years, whatever, that's awesome. Here's my money. And then someone throws a wrench in
Oh,
the plan and I'm like, oh my God, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? I don't know. I don't even work in the field. Where am I supposed to? And my brain is probably just going to, go off the rails. But to have someone like you on my team who's going to look out for me and say, don't worry, I got this. And the links that you went through to follow through on that is making my heart melt right now. I am so impressed. I don't think I'd want anyone else on my team. That is so incredible.
well, it's funny. I have a kid that works with me. His name is John. And funny enough, the builder that had went under, we had found another lot in another subdivision. His parents introduced him to me and said, John's a bit of a different type person. He's a actuary. He's got a master's degree in mathematics. I call it, he's a little bit like Sheldon, you know, from Big Bang Theory. He's very, very particular and extremely smart. And when I first met John, I'll never forget, he got out of the car and showing him a property in the development that I lived in, and he said, "Do you see this watch?" And I said, "Yep." He said, "I looked at 1,000 watches before I bought this watch." And I went, "Oh boy, he's going to be awesome."
No segue
Yeah,
whatsoever.
and ultimately the goal was the only way that this kid's going to get what he wants is if he builds it. And I introduced him to the builder. They worked through a set of drawings. They bought a building lot. They started construction, and the builder went under, and this whole thing went sideways. And he said, "What do I do now?" I said, "Well, because of the deposit structure that you did, let's get your money back." And because it wasn't in the development that I was working with the developer on, it was a separate area, and the lot was already owned by the builder that was going under. There wasn't much I could do other than just get him his deposit back. So we registered with Terrion, who was the warranty program at the time. We got him his deposit back, and he said, "Mike, I still want to build a home." And he said, "But the only person I trust is you." And at that point, I was already fixing and finishing the other houses in the other development. And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, if you find a building lot that you think is going to work for you, I'll introduce you to our architect and he'll draw a set of drawings up. And what I can do for you to help you with cost is we'll just project manage the whole thing out so you can build your own house together. You and I will build it together." And my other partner that I was working with, the developer's son, said, "Yeah, we'll do this together. We'll pull our trades together. He pays the bills. We'll get the house built." So there was a lot next door to my personal residence that our heating and cooling company had bought for his daughter. And at some point, a for sale by owner sign went on the front lawn. A couple weeks goes by, and John calls me and says, "I bought a lot." And we're like, "Awesome." And he's like, "Yep. And I got my drawings. Here's my drawings. And it fits on the lot. What do we got to do to apply for the building permit?" I'm like, "Terrific. Where is it located?" It was next door to my house. So he's actually become a longtime friend now since like 2010 when I built his home for him. Not only was my next door neighbor forever as well, but he's now one of our agents on my Windsor real estate team. He's actually joined the real estate crew to kind of stay in the flow. So it's amazing how relationships over time evolve through your business, right? And he brings a really unique set of skills to the real estate team because he's so number driven for our real estate investors, because he can crunch out the numbers on a deal and know whether it's going to work better than anybody on the planet.
Mm, that's so important to have. That's where one of those people, they buy a property and it's all of a sudden it's just negative cash flow. And
Yeah,
so
and I
someone like
always say that
John
if
to
yeah, if the property doesn't work in the beginning, then it's not going to work in the end, right?
hmm
I always looked at, if you're going to buy even a duplex or a triplex, if you can't make a cash flow on the purchase price you bought it, you can't hope on the maybe, woulda, coulda. You can't you can't bet on the cycling of a tenant, especially with the tenant rules nowadays. You really got to buy something at the price that the deal works the way it is. And then any improvement that you can do to that property, that's your win, that's your benefit. You should never be paying someone for the work you're going to do in the future, right? There
Mm.
was that era during COVID where everything was proposed rental income. I used to hate that. It used to make me cringe. I'm like, we're not buying this duplex on a dream. We are buying this at the cash value that it actually financially sustains itself.
Okay, so that's really interesting. I'm glad that you said that because I spent a fair amount of time trying to, educate myself, take courses and coaching and everything like that on real estate investing for myself. And a good chunk of that education was purchase underperforming and then forecast what it's going to be, its after renovation value, ARV, and then that's what your rent will be. But you're saying something different. Can you break that down for me and what the
Yeah.
difference would be?
So in 2014 and 2015 and 2016 and 2017, that strategy of buying something underperforming worked really well because you were able to buy something at a low cost per door, and there was ample supply of lower rental rates out there in the market that if you were trying to, say, give a client or a tenant cash for keys, you could give him cash for keys of a couple $1,000s, and he could make a lateral move from his $800 a month rental to another $800 a month rental. The struggle happened around 2018, 2019, where prices grew rapidly at that point. They were getting up out of hand because investing became a real cool thing. And there was way more people in the market trying to buy income property than there were back then. So as that was happening and as units were getting renovated, rental rates started to rise. Well, who wanted to move from an $800 apartment and have to pay $1,200 instead? That's where the bottleneck happened for that strategy. Is now
Okay.
because all the stuff that was in the market started being eaten up and being changed out for higher valued rental rate because it was being renovated. So you had the old investors that owned properties for years. The properties were tired. You could buy them nice and cheap. You could pay cash for keys because there was another one across the street that the people could move to. You know what I mean? Now, all of a sudden, this mass influx of investors, new investors have come into the market. They've bought up the older inventory. They've improved the quality of life for the people. But for people that were limited on their income, they locked in. They're like, they couldn't make the move up because they may not qualify. And again, things that we learn in education as newer investors different than the old Italian guy who, as long as you had a heartbeat, he let you live there. Now you're looking at credit ratings, now you're looking at credit scores, now you're looking at proof and verification of income. you know you can only get wounded once and then you get a little gun shy on the next round up. Well, that made it more and more difficult for those lower end people to make the transition. And it's even that problem now. Like, I've got rental properties that have tenants in them for $1,300 a month, $1,100 a month, and they've been there for the 12 years, 14 years I've owned those properties. I have to just realize that I had to buy them at a price that allowed that number that I got at the time I bought the property to cash flow in a positive way that I found benefit to, right? Fortunately for us, we bought all our condos for like 70 or 80,000 bucks at the time, even though now they're worth maybe 300. But $1,100 a month rent on an $80,000 condo, the numbers worked really well. Try and get that tenant to move to a new condo now, where the average rental rate for a new condo is 2250. They can't even afford it. It doesn't even match their income level.
And do you raise the rent on an annual basis as well?
uh, Again, we bought the properties to know that they successfully cash flowed when we made the acquisition. Our purchase strategy was long-term buy and hold, which meant that every extra dollar that we had, we continued to push down on our mortgage pay down until we bought those. Because they were so inexpensive, we put a heavier down payment down so we could accelerate the the pay down on the mortgage. We're now, I think maybe we got 25 grand owing on a couple of them. The rest of them have been paid for. So there's not a sense of urgency to shoot the person who's living there. I think for us, we're just waiting for the turnovers, right? We've got some seniors that live in a few of those units. Maybe they'll be there another 5 or 6 years. Then we'll go in and renovate the unit. Then we'll go in there. But right now, they maintain the properties. We don't, they keep them in good shape for us. They take pride in their ownership. We told them to live here forever, and that's really what we kind of wanted to keep that strategy for. But that's what we did for our portfolio, right? Instead of having a lot of doors, we shrunk down and took less doors, but more equitable position on those doors so that we can make less cash flow better.
That's incredible. And that, once again, impressed. It just goes to show how far you're willing to go and how far in advance you're planning so that you can provide safe and affordable housing. You're not going to be one of those landlords that's just going to hike up the rent so that it's unaffordable. I mean, I know people who are in, the KW area in Ontario, southwestern Ontario, and They just moved in last weekend, so this is how relevant it is. That's April of 2026. And they're sharing a basement apartment with someone whom they've never met. It's a two-bedroom apartment, shared bathroom, shared kitchen, shared common living space, but they get their own bedroom, and it's $1,100 each,
Yeah.
which is insane. But look at what you're doing with the mindset of make sure that it cash flows at the price, the purchase price, the original purchase price, even without renovations. It can still be affordable. It can still cash flow for you, and you can still offer safe and affordable housing for your tenants without having to increase and hike it up every single year. That what,
Oh, and
1,
and
2%.
that's it. Our goal as an investor, and I think a lot of people got loose, right? They started gold plating the toilet, is what I say. And that's not the solution to being a housing provider. You want to provide a clean, safe, and affordable property. You want it to be fresh. You want it to be clean. If the cabinets are older oak cabinets, you can have a guy go in and resurface them. You don't need to gut them out of there, right? The idea is to modernize those apartments but keep them stable. And I think, I was with another investor from my market, and he was showing one of my other buildings, and he was talking with his investor, and I was just kind of sitting back listening to the because he's a realtor, and he's like, you know we rip out all the countertops and we put in granite because that's the new industry standard. And I'm like, where did
Mm-mm.
$8,000 in kitchen cabinets and granite countertops come from for rental properties that rent for $1,200 a month? Like, I don't know where he's coming from, but like, they set expectations in their head and their standards that far exceeded what was required in order to get because you're not getting more money for rent because you put an undermounted sink on it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or a hard surface countertop versus linoleum. If it was brand new, it's brand new, right? If the kitchen's all new, the kitchen's all new. If the appliances are all stainless steel, the appliances are all stainless steel. There didn't need to be like an over improvement to the property. And that's where we're seeing that price battle right now. Young kids got in the business, they wanted to build it like the Taj Mahal. They instead of using a simple 4 1/4 or 4.5 inch baseboard, they went to a 6 inch baseboard and colonial trim, and they added all these addition benefits with levered handles. And you could have achieved the same goal at a much more affordable rate, and still got the same rent because they didn't get more money in rent, but they spent a lot more money in cost. And that's where the burrs got stuck. When the market made the adjustment, all these people got hit because they were trying to gold plate the toilets. And then when they looked at their ARV when the market came post COVID, they couldn't get the ARV they needed, and they were backwards on these deals. And that's where we've seen a lot of opportunities falter. We like to say over at R&R, thank God we weren't involved in any of those.
Oh my
None
goodness,
of our
yes.
realtors sold those, which was good for us. Because in the industry, like, there were some pretty big ones that got in and bought big projects and took on a lot of stuff with real strong ambitions that the prices were going to continue to grow, and the ARV projections were way off from where they landed at the other end. The other thing is the pivots and movements that people were looking at taking a building, doing improvements, and then refinancing them into like an MLI or a CMHC program financing, to find out that they made adjustments to that program through the process of why they were doing it that directly affected the fact that they couldn't refinance them the way they wanted. And that was another issue, right? So
Mm-hmm.
all of those things need to play a role in working with a real estate investor or working even with an entrepreneur in their business model in general. I mean, fortunately for me, I've kind of been a little bit of a Swiss Army knife in a bunch of different fields now, not because I wanted to again, but because out of necessity, I had to pivot and pivot and pivot and adjust and pivot. And I always kept kind of a core value of what I was doing every day as my bread and butter, but had all these little side pieces that came into the mix that helped the experience level to say, hey, maybe we need to adjust and go this way, or maybe we need to go that way. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's a point that I did want to get to, but for those people who don't know what a burr is, can you just break that down real quick?
Yeah, so a burr is typically when someone's going to buy a property, renovate the property, rent it, refinance it, and repeat it. Or a flip in the same situation where someone's going to buy a property, vacate the property, renovate the property, and then flip the finance or flip the deal, and sell the property again. Those adjusted after repair value ARV issues were where people really got caught. I think people were shooting for the stars with rental rates, shooting for the stars with ARVs to try and come up with that rental rate. They were also pushing cap rates down, right? When we're looking
Hmm.
at deals, we're always looking at like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in caps. Like I seen guys that are looking at deals at 3, 4, and 5. Like just interest rates alone can crucify you when you're playing in that lower space.
And can you give us a quick breakdown of what a cap rate is so that we can see how that coincides with what you're saying?
Yeah, so a cap rate is typically the net operating income divided into the purchase value of the property. And what that's going to give you is a number of where that building would sustain itself. Um,
Perfect. Thank you. So have I just want to build off of this for just a second. So people, let's say they want a burr where they're gonna buy a unit, they're gonna renovate it, they're gonna rent it out, then they're gonna refinance, and then rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat.
yeah.
And then without thinking about this is an idea and this is what I want to do, and you kind of get tunnel vision. And I think this is where the problem begins. Correct me if I'm wrong, where they say this is what I'm going to do. Then they do the renovations, more often than not, but not always. They will get carried away with renovations because it's a passion project and you have to have that brass faucet and that really nice
Hmm.
chandelier. So then you brought the value up too high. So now you need to find tenants that are going to be able to afford the rent just to pay for all this stuff, where maybe you didn't plan for it and maybe the rental rates in that area don't exactly match where you've brought it up to. Maybe the bar's a little too high. Now, keep in mind, you still have to refinance. You still have to qualify for a refinance on that property. And sometimes you can end up shooting yourself in the foot. Is that correct?
Yeah. And just to kind of go back a bit on that, it's not a situation where they raised the value. It's a question of that they over improved. The value may not have adjusted. Like a kitchen is still a kitchen is still a kitchen, and a floor is still a floor and is a floor. If you chose to put marble in instead of tile, the appraiser doesn't care, right? Nor does the comparables within the market space. So the over improvement in, and this isn't just for real estate investors, this is for people in general. We see this in the real estate industry all the time where people get into the whole I built this with my own two hands, and they get personally attached to a project and they over improve that property above and beyond what the comparables in that market will manage. And there's not a chance to save the rent. Like if the average rental rate is 2,200 and you're trying to get 3 grand, you're done. Like you got to remember that you got to live with the mistake you made in that situation, or you got to suffer through it, right? Like I always tell people, it's one thing to make a mistake, it's another to live with it. Truth be told, the second time you do a renovation project, you're probably not going to put the same type of faucets and extras and add-ons into that property. But this is part of the whole R&R mantra. You got to build your team. It's not just the realtor. It's the contractor. It's your roofing guy. It's your window guy. It's building out your entire network of people so that you understand what it costs to actually do stuff. Because I can't say how many times I've seen people say, "Oh, you can buy this house and with 50 grand you can renovate it." And I'm looking at them saying, 50 grand? Like the 50 grand isn't even going to get me through the mechanicals. What do you mean 50 grand? Like the new furnace, the new AC, the new plumbing, the new wiring is going to cost me 50 grand. Like I'm not even going to be able to drywall this, paint it, let alone put in a new kitchen and a new bathroom. So sometimes I see those numbers come off of people because they're just guessing. Or a lot of times they'll say, oh, well, flooring is $2 a square foot. So they'll go $2 a square foot times 1,000 square feet. And they'll say, oh, that's $2,000 to buy the new floor. That's to buy the new floor. But who's going to put it in? And what's the labor cost to incur to do that? And what's the time it takes to do that? And how is that reflected against the payments that I have to make? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Carrying costs month to
there's
month before
there's a
it's
lot
rented
of
out.
deeper stuff that I think as a new investor, people forget.
Hmm.
That's why it's so important to get a little education and maybe get a real estate coach or actually have someone who's trying to guide you a bit through the process. I mean, for my clients, they got me. So I babysit them and hold their hand through everything they do. I never let them do anything because I'm a little bit of a control freak to make sure that it's going to go the way it is. And it's because it's my reputation on the line, right? And I think you'll find a lot of our agents are the same way. They're going to hold people's hand through the whole process and steer them in the right direction of different property managers and contractors and people that they can put on their team. But just because they're giving you those referrals doesn't mean that's where you need to stay committed. You still need to spend the time, if you're picking a market to work in, that you should be meeting people, having conversations with those people, and finding people that mesh with you. Because I may have a flooring guy that I love and I think's the greatest guy in the world, but you can't get along with him for 2 minutes, right? Because personalities in this world clash. And it's important for you to have your own team of people that you can feel confident with. And before you're making the decision to make the purchase, you need to have that team in place. I get investors, I'm going to do a flip. I'm like, awesome. Where are you thinking of buying a flip? Atlanta. Atlanta. Where do you live? Oh, I live in Niagara Falls, Ontario, and I want to buy a flip in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm like, have you ever been to Atlanta, Georgia? Nope, but I hear it's a good spot to go.
I love
you know?
Georgia.
Yeah, and I'm like, great. So here we are. I found you an awesome property. It's for the price you want to buy it, and you're ready to do your flip. Who in the hell is going to do your plumbing? I don't know yet.
Mm.
Well, then we're not buying a property until you know the answer to that question. Because I've seen so many people shoot themselves in the leg because they shoot first and ask questions later. And you can't be a flipper if you don't have a contracting team to do the work to do it. I got one right now in Detroit, and he's a close tie to me. And they bought the building and they found a contractor, and that contractor sucked. And now they're in over their head, and they're 8 months longer in the time of doing this project because they didn't build the team at the front, right? So building a team at the beginning of the stage is way better than trying to find them in the middle.
And that's where we'll leave this conversation for now. What an incredible way to bring this episode and season 1 of the PowerHaus Podcast to a close. But this story isn't over. Mike just shared one of the biggest lessons for anyone getting into real estate. Build your team before you buy the property. And in part 2, coming in season 2, we get into exactly how to do that. How to coordinate trades, avoid costly mistakes, choose the right market, analyze opportunities, protect yourself as an investor, and understand where some of the real opportunities are in today's market. And believe me, you won't want to miss what's to come. If you're enjoying the PowerHaus Podcast, now is the time to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us grow, reach more listeners around the world, and continue bringing you powerful conversations with entrepreneurs who have faced challenges, taken risks, and built lives of meaning and success. If someone came to mind while you were listening, send this episode their way. You never know how one message, one moment, or one story can impact someone's life. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the show, and thank you for being part of season 1. I'm Gabrielle Caine, and this is the PowerHaus Podcast. I'll see you in season 2. This is the PowerHaus Podcast with Gabrielle Caine. Know someone who should be on the show? Email info@powerhouspodcast.com. Until next time, do one thing differently today.